Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of Lurking for Legends. Our mission in Lurking for Legends is to help everyone discover their next favorite author. Please feel free to join in the conversation by typing your questions in the comments section. Tonight, my amazing co-host, historical suspense author Christie Stratos, and I will be talking to multi-genre author JD Estrada to learn as much as we can about his books. JD writes in many different genres, and we'll talk about that. Welcome to Lurking for Legends, JD. Christie and I are delighted to have you with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. And the tea is very hot, so I will start with water.
So just so everyone else can know a little bit about you, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm a Puerto Rican indie author, a multi-genre author I've been at this since 2013. And little by little, I've gotten a pretty interesting reputation about being a banana secret agent, about being a poet, about writing nonfiction, about being a proud son. That's something that's very important to me. And, you know, writing about vampires that don't sparkle because they don't have to.
I love it. And one of the things that's so great, first of all, I just want to say that, like, so anybody who knows you has something special with you. So there's always, like, I see everywhere, you know, when you're commenting on somebody else's anything really, anywhere, there's always something really special between you two. And I think it's just so nice that you are so easy to, like, you're friendly, you get along with, like, everyone, and just have so many friends in the writing community. How do you meet so many people in the writing community?
I've always met random people, and I some people hate small talk, and I love small talk. And the thing is that if you have small talk with a writer, it's not going to be small and it's not going to be short. To give you an example, I've been chatting with people since I was like 15. I remember being on ICQ and stuff like that, and just dreaming about chatting, and that just transferred into how I am as an author. And if anyone wants to have like a proper chat about anything, I'm game. And I've been able to meet people from so many places, and everyone has a unique story. You say that I find that link, and I love finding those links with people, because some people have these boilerplate answers or conversations that they have their own blurbs, and I'd rather just generate something new and fresh. And everyone has something special in terms of you, from your nonfiction work and what you do as an editor to your historical fiction, or historical suspense. I like that title. I like that title more. I've always mentioned to people that I think you're elite, and I don't think I know you're elite because I read your books and I devour them. And with other people, everyone has a skill set and has something special to offer. And I talk a lot, but I try to listen as well, and not just wait for my turn to talk. And I think people resonate with that. And if it's a young author who's 8, 9, 10 years old, or it's someone that is like well into their 70s and they're asking for advice, I'm always happy to give advice, and advice that helps them, not like the 10 steps of things that you have to do. It's like, okay, so what do you want to do? And you enter in that conversation. And by listening to them and offering something that's true and genuine, people connect and they stick around. And I've had friends for years and years and years.
It's really just so nice. I love seeing that around too.
I love the reference to ICQ. I don't know if that's, I don't know if Christie's old enough to remember ICQ. No.
What is it?
ICQ is like Messenger. It's the precursor
for a messenger. You knew you had a message coming in because you heard, oh,
I didn't know that.
Mnemonically, you would start hearing that everywhere. It's pretty crazy.
It was awesome. Yeah, I used to love hearing that. My sister and I used to go always back and forth, because back then you didn't have the friends like you do now. Like, especially on Facebook and everywhere, you have thousands of friends. You had a couple people that you just knew, and you'd ICQ each other, and then you'd email each other, and you phone each other and talk about your email and stuff like that. It was really fun. But I mentioned on the intro, JD, that you're a multi-genre author.
Yeah.
And so, what does multi-genre for you encompass? Like, what genres do you actually write about?
What genres have I written? Because eventually, if there's anything that tickles my fancy, I want to tackle it. And I see it as we all have different soul wells, and what I find within myself when I write poetry is very different from my voice when I write nonfiction, and it's very different in English and Spanish. And I actually write in both languages. I'm starting to write more in Spanish. People are happy about that. I've had 2 short stories in horror collections, which is peculiar. But I connected with some fellow authors from Puerto Rico, very lovely people who actually, they're from Icon Books, and one invitation led to another. And, why not horror? Why not, eventually I'll do suspense, but I write my first novel is urban fantasy. And I did that because that was the original inspiration. I was chatting, I was watching TV, I was listening to music, and I was, doing something else, because multitasking is just, it's part of our nature. And then I saw a commercial for Underworld, and I was like, I can do something like that. And that cocky, comment turned into, okay, let's sit down and do a premise. And it just got, more and more evolved and more evolved and more evolved. And eventually, it's become a very personal project where people go like, is that character based on you? And I go like, not that one, but that one. And stuff like that. I also write poetry, and I've taken poetry to comic conventions because people say, why? And I'm like, why not? As a teenager, writing poetry helped me a lot because we were broody, and, I never had like the long hair and, covering my eyes, but I did have the attitude. To be like a broody teenager, but it did help me to cope a lot, to learn a lot about myself, and just sometimes when you say something through a metaphor, you can actually let go of stuff that otherwise you would not be able to say, which is a concept that then I actually expressed it as emotional alchemy in my nonfiction book, Peace, Love, and Mockery-Rolls. Basically, take whatever stuff, to keep this PG, whatever stuff life throws at you, and just be an alchemist and create something with it. That's been very key to me. And in terms of anything else, again, I'm game. I just want to have fun and write stuff that not again. One of my main influences in terms of as a creator is David Bowie. David Bowie, he had a very wide palette of styles, but it always sounded like David Bowie. Mm-hmm. And that is what I try to do with my work. No matter what genre it is, if you pick it up and start reading, you go like, that's JD.
So that answers my next question. I was going to ask you, in the different genres, do you use a pen name to separate yourself in your genres? But I'm getting the feeling that you don't. You're always JD. No.
I'm always JD. My BookTube, AuthorTube YouTube channel covers a wide variety of things. I play guitar and sing, and I put it on the channel because some people do prefer to segment things, but I think that in my case, that was to not putting as much love to one thing or another. And I just want to show that, this is the complete JD package. Mm-hmm. It's not take it or leave it. It's also an invitation. If you have an interest, just, explore it and enjoy it. Online, I do a bunch of things, and people get reminded of me when they're having tea, when they see socks, when they see a typo, when they see a banana and stuff like that. And to me, that's just as special as when someone, I've had some people send me pictures that are like, dude, I thought about your novel when I went to this cafe, and I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it really is. And like you mentioned a few things that you do there, and I wanted to ask about those too. You were talking a little bit about Double O Bananas beforehand, before the show started, and there's also the visual typos, and they're so much fun. I have no idea how you keep coming up with them, but every time I'm like, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one, And there's just a bunch of stuff that the Sakatumi, I love the Sakatumi, even if I don't have anything to share there. I love seeing it. It's just so much fun. Like I know these have like come up over time, but I mean, how do you think of this stuff to put up? I'm always like struggling a little bit with the content that I want to share.
I have a hyperactive mind, and the thing is that For me, I also want to be like an ambassador of creativity, because I think that expressing yourself creatively and just using whatever energy you have or excess energy you have to create is a very healthy thing. For me, each one has its own challenge. For the visual typos, it's like, okay, I need it to be like a very small typo, and that the visual, I like it when the visuals look rough, because when you work in advertising, everything has to be polished and whatnot. And I've worked with some artists that aren't magnificent, and sometimes you see a layout that is kind of bad, and it's kind of funny, and that's also the intention of that, doing like a punny dad joke visual, and at the same time, where you and no matter where you look, you go like, yeah, this is cringy, buddy. This is cringy but funny. The dictionary, being from Puerto Rico, everyone goes like, oh, so you drink a lot of coffee, and basically, I used to drink a lot of coffee. I still drink coffee, but it's like 1 coffee a day and as much tea as this vessel can hold in a day. But and people are aware of that. And I'm like, why? Tea is fantastic, and tea has so many varieties. And I just wanted to do something that is less silly, but is just as quirky. With the Sky Thoughts, it's something that I do because that's the visual typos and the dictionary and other stuff. I can do those artworks and have them stockpiled. The Sky Thoughts are always done in a moment, and it's where I want my mindset to go to, and it just helps me cope with different things. And the socks, just try to do something interesting with socks and invite people to be silly. And in terms of favorite tea, the brand, I'm not sure. Favorite tea I'm having right now, it's Rooibos, which is Red Bush tea, by the way.
Red Bush tea. Who makes Red Bush tea?
It's originally from South Africa, I think, is the first place that they were doing that type of tea. It's very herbally, but it's not as heavy to me as green tea or whatnot. It's got some very particular notes, and I just it's something that I tried and I was like, oh, that's nice. And then it's like red tea. So obviously you have to, oh my God, it's so red. And, and you just go on a tangent, and it's like, nah, I just enjoy the tea.
My wife works for a fancy tea company up here in Canada, and they always make fun of me because I'm always in a rush. I just want to get back to my computer. So I don't do anything out of the norm. I just get Earl Grey or orange pico tea in a little bag, and I throw it in my cup, and they always tell me I'm drinking hot dog tea. So that's why I drink hot dog tea. But.
No, my second favorite tea is Earl Grey. Some people are a bit, they're a bit iffy about the bergamot, but I love it.
Yeah. This is a kind of not a writing question, but I've always wondered, with all these different things that you create for Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that, what program are you using? Is it like Canva, or is it just like anything? What kind of stuff do you use?
Mainly I use Canva, but for Sky Thoughts, I don't like the fonts that I have, and I think it's Studio. And I actually do that on the phone. So I take the pictures, or maybe someone sends me a picture and I do it on, Studio. Maybe I use PicStitch or something occasionally, but mostly Canva and that. And I used to do it like really, really rough on PowerPoint and just do a screenshot and crop it. It was so tacky. And that was part of the fun, just being very tacky.
That's so funny. Yeah, I do love Canva for any of that kind of stuff. It is super easy. So I always wondered if you did it on your phone or not.
I've even used Canva to do some covers. When I have an urban fantasy or when I have a middle grade fiction, obviously I'm going to hire someone because it's something that I need to reach more people. It's something that's going to, the money is worthwhile. In terms of poetry, first off, I want to keep it very personal, and second off, it's controlling cost because it's still poetry. It's not something that's going to be, burning off. Who knows? Maybe eventually I'll be a less crude Bukowski, but I also tackle it that way. And the last cover, Recollection, my wife helped me with that one. She helped with Pensando en Metáforas, and 2020, which is my bilingual collection. She also helped with that cover. I did the Peace, Love, and Mackerels. The For Writing Out Loud, I used a royalty-free picture that is, after I published it, it started popping up everywhere. And I'm like, I might have to change that one.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So you mentioned that you play guitar, and I read that, I think it was your blog, that you've actually went in the studio and recorded a song. Do you write the music yourself, or are you recording someone else's music?
No, I've played covers on YouTube, but I compose and write when I remember to write lyrics, and when I remember to enunciate, don't mumble through them. I do all of that. It's self-taught. I took 2 guitar classes, and I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And obvious gaps in my guitar playing and my musical knowledge, but I can still carry a tune. So
Nice.
It's also just nice to see somebody create in different ways. Like you said, I really like when you said you're a creativity ambassador. And if you don't have that places, you should put it places, because it's really a pretty smart thing to say. And it does define you really well. I just love, the idea of you sharing that you can create in so many ways. I feel like sometimes we think we're limited, just because, oh, this is what I've always been good at, or this is what I like. But sometimes when you reach outside the box, you find you're actually better at other things, or you can become better at other things that kind of feed into each other in different ways.
I think everything, feeds into each other, as you mentioned. I really love writing poetry because I actually think that my verses and my poetry helps my prose, because rather than doing the correct thing, you start hitting on nails on more unique things. And I enjoy that a lot more. I enjoy, sometimes, yes, I do have to edit and verify that grammar and tenses are correct. But oftentimes I hit on a line that for some reason strikes me. I put it down on paper, and then someone reads it and they have not the same reaction, but they have a special reaction. And for me, that's the key thing. And anything that feeds into your writing, that's why I also write nonfiction. And when I write nonfiction, it engages your brain in a different way. And anything that feeds the brain, I'm a big fan of.
That's so true.
So David Kelly asked, do you find it difficult writing in 2 different languages? Does it cause any problems for you?
No, people are surprised that English is my second language. First off, second off, being Puerto Rican, people say, "Why do you write mostly in English?" And to be very honest, I'm just more comfortable writing in English. I think it's a more malleable language. Spanish is very robust and a beautiful language, but it's kind of intimidating for me because I get a lot of great responses on the English, and then in Spanish, it's on certain occasions that people connect, or at least that's my perception. I don't know if it's right or not, but in terms of writing in 2 languages, I can switch de un idioma to the other and not miss a beat in terms of cómo va la gramática en un lenguaje, and then you switch back to English and you can finish a sentence sin ningún problema alguno. And I can do that, and people go like, how do you do that? And I'm like, since I do so much translation work, my brain is constantly running both languages at the same time. So in terms of switching from one language to another, it's not an issue. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's like a prism. You just shift it slightly, and it's going to have different notes and different, a different feel to it, a different rhythm to it. Because in English, I'm pretty chill, and in Spanish, I'm and this is me chill. I'm a lively guy. In Spanish, I'm even more lively. And people say, slow down. I could not understand a word you said. And I'm like, okay.
With all that tea, or?
It's just my brain is going at 1,000 miles an hour, and it's just, I can speak faster in Spanish than English. That's pretty interesting.
Is there anything that makes you say, like, this poetry collection in particular, I want it to be in Spanish? And along the same lines, do you see yourself ever writing like a novel or even a novella or something in Spanish?
I am working on several concepts for English and Spanish, and it's just different things that I hit on. In terms of a novel that I'm going to be working on in Spanish, I want to do a middle grade about like a teenage witch, but not annoying as so many Netflix anime series. I just want her to be sweet. Think more. Again, I'm a big fan of Studio Ghibli. I do like the strong female characters that they portray. So it would have that feel, but it would be Hispanic. And when I say Hispanic, I mean Hispanic, not necessarily Latino. So I would start with something like the counterpart of the UK would be Spain. So I want to do something in that setting because I actually was able to visit Spain and I wanted to do something about that. But in terms of Puerto Rico, some very special things are coming along as well, because I want to do also a middle grade set in Old San Juan in Puerto Rico, because if you've ever gone to Puerto Rico and you ever go to Old San Juan, it has a very interesting air to it. And I grew up in that place and I have a ton of stories. And, you know, my mom, she had a store in Old San Juan and she knew a bunch of people. So basically, I would walk around like a 3-block radius freely. Like, you know, this is my reserve. This is the little lion in his reserve. And I was like, yes, I'm free. And everyone was keeping an eye on me. But that let me see so many interesting things that I want to take those experiences and transfer that into a story. And in terms of poetry, what normally happens is that I'm writing poetry as it is, and then I stockpile it, and then I start reading, and then I see like 1 or 2 that share a theme, and then I see that theme is shared by a 4th one and a 5th one, and eventually you go like, there's a collection here. You see it, and what's interesting for me in terms of poetry is curating a collection so that I feel comfortable in terms of how you're meant to read it from, you know, page 1 to the last page, with the exception of Roulette of Rhymes. Roulette of Rhymes, with the exception of the last poem, which is quite the long poem. Everything else is interchangeable, you know, and it's meant to be read in shuffle. It's meant for you to, you know, flip it open and it's like, I'm going to read this. The others have that rhythm, and I think of it as a music album in that sense. And it's very painstaking because you stress about, should I put this poem on this page or this page? And you go like, it doesn't really make a difference. And then part of you goes like, it does. And you go like, okay.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I answered like 50 questions and, you know, 20 that you didn't ask, but that's me.
No, it's really good because it does like what you're talking about with the organization of the poems and sort of not being sure whether you should or shouldn't care about it, and ultimately caring about it it's the reader experience, you know? So, I mean, while some readers are going to just skip around because it's poetry, it's just short works, they'll just skip around. There are others who will read front to back and get like the experience that you're trying to create for them.
Basically, I take my experience as a reader, because sometimes normally I do like to read from, you know, the full sequence, but occasionally for X or Y reason, this poetry collection, I want to flip through it. And that's why I did Roulette of Rhymes, to at least have one that I do that.
Yeah. We have a question from, yeah, go ahead, Richard.
That's great. Samantha Harris is asking, will you have the Spanish novel translated in English so more people can enjoy it? And piggybacking on that, before you answer that, since you write in both, I assume you published in both, what is your experience you know, I've always been told that the U.S. is the biggest market for authors, but, you know, there's a lot of Spanish speaking people in the U.S. So does that mean that the English part of the U.S. is the biggest market, or do you find that you get decent success with the Spanish market as well?
In terms of Spanish books, my audience is mainly Puerto Rico, and there's a couple of other places. When you go to the UK and you go to New Zealand and you go to Australia and you go to South Africa and you go to the States, yes, there are variants and yes, there are accents, but it is much more similar than when you flip from one Latin American country to the other. And when you go to Spain, it's a fascinating thing, but making something that's universally good for Spanish audiences is a challenge. And that, I think that's part of my trepidation. And the response to that is probably going to be to double down on my Puerto Rican heritage and probably my Cuban background, because mom was Cuban and I was raised by a bunch of Cubans. So although I've never been to Cuba, although I'm not familiar with most of the history as I am with other places, that's still part of me. So I'll probably go more Caribbean. In terms of Samantha's question, I'm actually not sure. Because in terms of fiction and fantasy, we depend so much on getting translations to, you know, in Puerto Rico and Spanish-speaking countries, that I don't know if it's worthwhile dangling the Spanish book and saying, learn our language.
And actually, speaking of that, you mentioned Puerto Rico, and I did want to bring up, you have done in the past before COVID a con there, right? There was a con you always used to go to, and so I'm sure that any of your Spanish books probably did well there, even though they're maybe not what would necessarily typically be at a con. Still, there's something special there.
Yeah. The thing is that the perception of people is that everyone in Puerto Rico just speaks Spanish, but there is a big geek culture and nerd culture, and there are like-minded people like me. You know, we speak fluently. People go like, "You're really from Puerto Rico?" And I get that a lot. "You're not from Puerto. You don't look Puerto Rican. You don't sound Puerto Rican." And I go like, "No, I'm from Puerto Rico."
I promise.
Yeah, but people see that you go for it, and that you go for it in English, and that you don't pull punches, and that you can stand with some other renowned author. That I've been compared to some people that I go like, "What? Why, thank you," and then I'm strutting for a couple of days. But they see that you go in English, and it's curious because the dynamic varies between people, and you get 3 types of responses. Why do you write in English? And then you explain, and they're either on board or not, and that's fine. And there are some people that are super impressed, and then there's some people that are skeptical until you start talking in English, and they go like, "Oh, let me check it out." On one occasion, one of the funnier stories was that at the Puerto Rico Comic Con, I had someone that they picked up Dark Strands. Dark Strands is my shortest poetry collection. Is, I don't know, like 30, 40 pages. I don't know. Right now, off the top of my head, I don't know. But it is short. I did want it to pack a punch. I did want it to have a couple of complicated things. To give you an example, there is one page that has the Dark Strands. The Dark Strands are, it's either 3 or 4 haikus, and they're interchangeable. You can read the first one with the second one and the third one, and it makes sense. You can read them alone, and it makes sense. And you can read the first one and the third one and the second one, and it makes sense. You know, it was very tricky, but it was a mental exercise that I wanted to do. I don't think I'll ever do it again, because that was a pain.
Sure.
And if that was a pain, the last one was a bigger pain, which is Miranda and the Broken Ghost, which is a narrative verse short story. It's 72 lines, 8 stanzas, 9 lines to the stanza, and the rhyme scheme is abacadabra. And I do not recommend that if you don't enjoy getting frustrated. Do not do that. If you like a tough challenge, that rhyme scheme is psychotic. When you get to like the 4th or 5th stanza, you go like, "What else rhymes?"
Yeah.
And it's very tricky.
Oh my God.
So totally switching topics here. CJ Davidson asking, how do you tackle social media? Do you do your own, and do you have a strategy for engagement?
I do my own. My strategy for engagement is engaging. I chat, and I try to respond to everyone, and I try to have fun with it. A long time ago, someone said, "Oh, you have to build your own platform," and I'm sure that they meant that you also had to promote your work. And I'm not so good at promoting my work, but I am pretty good at having my own platform. And again, the stuff that we've mentioned now, but there's other stuff that I do specifically on Twitter, specifically on Facebook, just to engage people differently. And I've noticed that different audiences respond differently, and each social media is its own creature. And what's interesting to me is engaging with that creature and making it work in terms of promoting a conversation and people having fun. Anything that can make people smile and be interesting and engaging, I'm for that. It doesn't have to be my books. I wish that all my book promotion books got like 1,000 views and likes, but that's not the case. But if I put a post asking if you prefer Doritos to Cheetos, and part of what people enjoy about those exchanges on Facebook is the random and quirky and cheeky responses that everyone gives. And again, anything that brings engagement, to me, that's very important. It's very important for me to not be a one-trick pony. And I'm really not big on force feeding people my books. Yes, they're available. Yes, I can do better in promoting, but people buy my books at a convention because first off, they're like, "Okay, who is this guy?" Second off, we have a conversation. Third off, they go like, "Oh, he's a nice guy. And he's not hitting me on the head with the book." And yes, I'm sure I could have better selling tactics, but people partially buy a piece of you, and what I want people to buy and see everywhere is that I'm willing to take a joke and give a joke, and anything that can make people smile. I always see something. If I see any opportunity to be cheeky, Christie can attest to that. I will be cheeky.
It's true.
You know, I not only look like a monkey, I am a cheeky monkey.
You're talking about engagement with Cheetos and Doritos. I find my biggest engagement is when we throw a cat in the picture. Like, I can talk about my books until I'm blue in the face, and I get the odd same people that always respond, and I am very grateful for them. But no one else responds. You put a cat in the picture, and all of a sudden these people come out of the woodwork and they just go crazy. Oh, look at the cat! So
to give you an example of something fun that I did with the books, and I have to do more, but the thing is that this takes time. Last year I did hidden images in the covers of my books. I hid my images in some of my favorite albums of all time, which was very fun. I did word searches, and I've done stuff like that. Again, not just promoting that, but when you put 3 hours into that effort and get 10 likes, you go like, oh man.
Yeah.
And then you go like, man, maybe someone didn't like it, and someone sends you a direct message, and they were like, man, when's the next word search? And you're like, dude. Because those are tough. Those are tough because I'm not gonna. I never go full ass. Never half-ass anything. Go full ass. And if I'm gonna do it, I want it so that people are challenged.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have something here from Samantha who says, advice for writers who are having a hard time getting started, especially with their first book. Everyone can have a hard time from time to time. It's you have to see your specific case and see what's your challenge. Are you finding lack of motivation? Are you finding lack of energy? Are your plot points not connecting? Do you need more of a structure? Everyone has a different thing. I really don't like the blanket statements, the 10 things that you have to do and blah, 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 because everyone is. Why, if I have a headache and I drink more water and have a good night's rest, it's better for me than Tylenol, and someone else needs, Tylenol or Advil or something like that. We're each different things, and creatively speaking, we're vastly different. So you would have to be very honest with yourself, and that's something that a lot of people have a hard time with. Being honest with yourself. What's the problem with this? There are too many words. There are too few words. The descriptions are lazy. I'm using the word just too much. You really, really have to, pull back, take off the gloves, hit yourself hard, be honest about it, and don't beat yourself about it. Just address it directly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great points. It's so absolutely true that everybody is different. So I think that's good. And the best thing you can do is just get started in whatever way feels right to you, whatever that means. That's why we can't say, do this, do that, Yeah,
to Richard's point, I'm also a multi-genre author. I don't get writer's block. I get writer's fatigue because, as a human being, I get fatigued. And sure. It's just like, oh God, I'm so tired. And then, having to get, the creative energy to do that can be a challenge. But sometimes people face a block because they insist on something. And how many times have you thought of something to try to get a solution? Nothing comes. Think about it. And you're like, man, think. You let go of the problem for a while. You go take a shower. You go take a bath. You go take a walk. You have a cookie. And suddenly, you get the solution because you're relaxed enough to get out of your own way. And that's something very common. And there are so many ways to get in your own way.
That's a great point. I just want to add to that because I've definitely had that experience of what you say. I totally agree with fatigue over block. There are so many ways to unblock yourself. But I also feel like what you were saying just now about not being sure where to go, I've dealt with that so many times. And the answer for me is always to just start writing, even if I don't really know what I'm doing, just start going. And inevitably, you will either end up saying, hey, this is going well and keep going, or you will end up saying, wow, I hate this. This is the worst thing I could have done. And then you know what not to do. So I feel like just moving ahead, if you need to refresh, of course, go ahead. But if you find that you're paused for a really long time, sometimes the only answer is just put out whatever is coming out and don't be afraid. It's your blank page. Nobody's judging you.
It's like a college board or an SAT. If you don't know the question, put C and put a mark to it so that you go back to it. And sometimes in one of my current works in progress, I've done that with a couple of chapters. The chapter wasn't flowing and I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get it down. And that chapter is, let's just say it's like when you're making crepes. The first one is not crepe. It's more on the crap side. But the second one is nice and fluffy and airy, and the third one is perfect flavor. And you got that one out of the way, so you can address that later. Right. Maybe what you're doing when things are flowing will help you get to the solutions that you need to get to that problem that, again, you got yourself in your way. And some people just focus, I need to write this chapter. Christie writes non-sequentially, so she shouldn't have that problem. She has other challenges, but I write sequentially. So for me, I can understand that type of block, and there's different ways to go about it. And the college board approach works more often than not.
Makes total sense. Yeah. There's no right way. Whatever works for you is the right way, David says.
And I think that's so true. Like you can't compare yourself to anyone else. You got to find out what works for you and then go with it.
Yeah.
What works for J.K. Rowling or Stephen King might not work for you, and that's fine. That's not a big deal.
Yeah,
find your voice, and away you go.
And another thing is that I don't write using a formula or the same approach every time. That's something that a lot of people do. People find like their special sauce, their magic mojo. And the thing is that when that magic mojo doesn't work, that's when they get scared. And it's completely fine. Well, it's not completely fine. I don't want anyone to feel bad while they're writing because I get so much enjoyment from it. But switching it up can be so refreshing. And that's why I enjoy being an ambassador of creativity, because sometimes you have to take that problem and look at it in another way, and you'll find the solution. The solutions are always there. It's just not necessarily going to be the solution that you want.
That's such a good point. Yeah. Sometimes it's surprising, the things.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Christie.
No, I was just saying sometimes it's surprising the things that work. It can be like the exact opposite of what you think will work. I never thought I could do word sprints ever. And then I found that I could, and it was working. And I only knew because I tried, before I tried it, I had said, there's no way I can't do that, period. And then I tried it and I was like, whoa, this is actually working for me. You just have no idea. What were you going to say, Richard?
No, you summed up exactly what I was going to say is, and speaking of word sprints, I've done them as well, and it's amazing how they get you to write, because you normally team up with at least one other person, and it's almost a competition at that point. You got this word sprint. You got to me anyway. I got 15 minutes. See how many or half hour, whatever time limit they give you, and then you compare. You let each other know that I got 1,000 words. Oh, that's very good. You pat each other on the back. So it almost becomes a competition to me that all of a sudden these things just start hitting the page, because psychologically I'm thinking, well, it's a word sprint. I got to get those words down, and it works well for me. I don't do them all the time, but I can see the benefit of them for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of you write nonfiction as well. That's one of the things that you write everything, but you write nonfiction as well. And those two books that I know of are For Writing Out Loud and Peace, Love, and Maki Rolls, which you mentioned before.
Yeah.
And I really like them. I have both of them, and they're my favorite books of yours because I find them just really inspiring. And if I ever feel sort of, I don't know, creatively either insecure, unsure what I'm doing, like maybe just a little lost, like in life, I will crack out one of those books and, crack it open and just start reading. And it's just very supportive. And of course, it's geared to everybody. It's not geared to me in particular, but it always feels like you're talking to me because I always come across all these situations that I have been in too. And the way that you write is very as if you're speaking to me, kind of a thing. So I really like them, and I definitely highly recommend them. Do you plan on doing more like that, or is that pretty much it for now?
No, I did a count on the works in progress that I have, and it's 26 right now. That includes poetry, that includes urban fantasy, that includes middle grade fiction, that includes nonfiction. Nonfiction in English and Spanish. In terms of nonfiction in English, to your point, and thank you, by the way. All nonfiction I do is to try to have a positive impact. For me to have a positive impact, some people have this approach where they're so wise and whatnot, and then there's other people that have gotten smacked around a bit by life, and they share their experiences, and I want that. I want to share my experiences, and also be very open with my experience, and say that this is my experience. This is not necessarily your experience, but maybe some of this can help. Sometimes it's like a buffet. Okay, so you don't like the meat, but maybe the salad bar is great. In terms of peace, love, and micro-roles, I wanted to do a guide to creative kindness, because I think people limit themselves in how to be kind to other people. And it can go from buying someone a cup of coffee that you don't know, when I offer a meal to someone who is unfortunately homeless, I always ask them, what do they want? They're like, so what's the cheapest combo? And I'm like, that's not the question. The question is, what do you want? Because it's not just the meal that you're giving them. You're giving them recognition that they have choice, that they matter. And one of the best answers that I've ever gotten was, man, can I have the steak salad? And I was like, this person wanted something that he could portion and that was good for him and that would keep even in colder weather, because I asked him why, and he told me, well, because of this and this and that, and it was such a smart answer that I'm like, if I ever see you again, just tell me what you want and I'll get you a meal. Unfortunately, I only saw him once. That was on Moe's on Peachtree Road. Very, very lovely guy. And again, some people are just down in their luck, and having that little bit of kindness can really help someone. To that point, on one occasion, I remember this friend from college, very lovely lass. She was very devout, very into Christianity, but I don't remember the exact denomination. I was always very happy when she was in her Bible group. And then one day I see her in the line at Borders. Oh Lord, I'm old. And I was like, so how are you doing? She's like, not so great. And I'm like, why? And she goes like, well, I want to study this, but I'm not sure. And I'm like, but that's great, because it goes because of this. And she was a bit dulled out. And then she was like, thank you. I really needed to hear that. And that's just one conversation, one comment. So in terms of that, and in terms of other nonfiction stuff that I'm going to do, I'm a bodyboarder. I'm not a surfer. I'm a bodyboarder. I love my sport, and I love that my sport has had it so tough, because it keeps even elite riders very humble and very friendly. And there are lessons that I've learned from water, especially to stay calm when you're getting hit by sets. So I want to do a book about that. I'm still tinkering on how to do it. I might ask my brother for advice or for a chapter. I do have in Spanish one that's more motivational and cheeky at the same time. And again, all the ideas that I can have, I jot them down. So in terms of nonfiction, I think it's 5 titles that I'm working on right now. I hope to finish them very soon, but I'm actually focusing on poetry first to start off the year and try to get the ball rolling.
That's great. So much to look forward to.
So just in the interest of time, we're just about at the end of our session here. What do you have coming up next? Like, do you have an imminent release? And Samantha Harris got a question here. It might be tough to sum this up quickly, but how long did it take you to be able to make a living off your writing without a backup career? And that's assuming that that's what you do.
Yeah, so, I need a day job. So I am 7 years in and still in progress. I do have faith that I can make my living off that. Technically, I'm a copywriter and I work in advertising and communications. So technically, my writing has been paying for the bill since 2004, but I still need a day job. I'm nowhere near sustainable. There are people who are much smarter and much more organized in it than me that can offer you way better advice. So I do it for the love, and I hope that it shows. In terms of imminent releases, the first one, I don't have a date. I do not have a date. I have 2 titles that for sure are going to be released this year. One is Ballads of Hope and Joy, which is a poetry collection, and I've actually contributed some of the poems that appear there to Auroras and Blossom, which is a literary magazine. run by very, very lovely people, David and Sandrine. And I wanted to do a poetry collection that was uplifting, because look at the times that we're living. And Beyond Human will be released this year. I had a conversation with the cover artist, and I will be finishing the human cycle this year. It is exciting. It is a bit, intimidating, because I'm wrapping up so many things. Time sometimes gets away from me, but I feel in the rodeo mood, and I'm gonna wrangle some time and get it done this year. It is gonna be 2021. That is, I'm done. I'm done waiting. And thank you, Samantha.
That's a nice way to wrap it up. I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add in there, Christie.
No, not for me in particular. I'm just super excited to see JD's next release, no matter what it is. I just love supporting you, and just so you guys know, he also does support charities. Sometimes he does full donations. Like he'll do a period of time where any book you buy or certain books you buy, he will donate everything to charity. And you also use smile.amazon.com, right? When you share your links.
Every time I use I share my links, I use Smile. If you have an opportunity to for any of your bucks to help someone else, why not? I even though Jeff Bezos will be stepping down as CEO of Amazon, I still think that some people need the money more than people at Amazon. Yes, they're going to get their fair share. Yes, they're going to get their cut. But that's why I also recommend people buy my physical books at Tazas y Portada, which is a local indie bookstore in Puerto Rico. Lovely people. They've supported in many ways, and just very sweet people. And I've been able to connect a lot more with the community back home thanks to them. So that's, if you're going to buy my physical books, go to their store. If you need help navigating the Spanish or Spanglish website, let me know, and I'll happily help you out. Because again, if you buy a book from Amazon, sure, it'll help the printer, and definitely Amazon. From a print book, I had to edit some things because I was getting, for a $17.99 book, I was getting a 54-cent commission, and I was like,
Ooh.
yeah, I'm gonna stop that wide distribution because it's not like I was selling a ton of books anyways. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Tazas y Portada, you give exposure to the bookstore, lovely people, and every time they sell a book, it makes their day.
Okay, that's awesome. So on behalf of Christie and myself, we appreciate you being here tonight, JD, and sharing a little bit of your experience. It was I really enjoyed it. I think you were a great interviewee.
You were.
Again, sometime, maybe when on an imminent release, sometime in the future, you feel like you want to come back on and share it with us, then please hit us up and we'll get you back on. So thank you for being here. And as next week, please join us next Tuesday as Christie and I speak with horror and fantasy author Anita Stewart. We'll discuss dark and deadly storylines that encompass those two genres, and it should be very interesting. And until then, we wish everybody an amazing evening, and take care, please.
Cheers.